everybody to settle down and sit in before I can start. Because even when you do puja, the first few steps is you inquire of the Lord, inquire of Bhagavan, Sukhado Bhava, Supratisthito Bhava, then Varado Bhava, Sumukho Bhava, Varado Bhava. Because without being seated to ask of attention will not be right. Okay, now let us begin. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shant Shant Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. In the last few weeks, I consciously, deliberately chose to speak on these topics which is a necessity, especially the given context and backdrop. How many of you are joining into this particular session for the very first time? Welcome. Okay. Just so that I can know who is plugged in for the last 3 weeks and it will be new to you, I'll try to connect with all those who have joined us recently as well. Let me start with the first one of the topics. Before I get there, there have been at least about 8 talks so far, 8 or 9. Rakeshji, 9 have been done, right? Huh. So 9 talks have been done. I have spoken on, in this particular session, on caste system, the origins of it. Though we know what the Shastra refers to, I have not touched upon that in this particular sessions. Why we see the disparity in the caste system and how was it engineered, socially engineered during the British, so as to not disown that caste system was created by British. No, that is not what I mean. It is a part of our own scripture. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam. It comes in Bhagavad Gita. Then Brahmano osya mukham asit bahurajanyakritah uru tadasya. Then Padhyam. So it comes in Purusha Suktam as well. So we are not saying or claiming that this Varna system was created by the British, but it was definitely engineered in such a way that the malpractices that we see today were injected by the British quite efficiently. That though they injected it at that time, the atrocious effect of it can be seen today after about 200 years of that implantation of those narratives. In the last 2 sessions, I have been going over the concept of AIT. What does AIT mean? It means 2 things. Aryan invasion theory, which was in the 1900s. As we came into the 2000s, I saw that shift from Aryan invasion theory to what it is today. It is called today as the Aryan immigration theory. That they did not invade, there was no invasion, but there was immigration. How many of you have heard of Aryans? Aryan, right. So the concept is that these Aryans invaded into India. Those who had settled in India were pushed down south. So those who were pushed down south were of a. Is my volume fading in and out? It also needs some juice. Check, check. Can you hear me? So that these Aryans came in pushing the existing population down south, and those who were pushed down south, they were called a race called Dravidians. They were darker in color, they were whereas the Aryans were whiter in color, and the Aryans brought in the entire Vedic literature, Vedic culture, agriculture, horses, dogs, economy, business. All of this was brought in by the Aryans, whereas the Dravidians were simple-minded settlers. So if the country is divided into Aryans and Dravidians, who was it that that land belonged to? Like, who were living in that land? What are they called? Any idea? Did my question confuse you? Did you get my question?
No, Dravidians were already living there.
That is where we make a mistake. Dravidians were the settlers. They were also settlers, they were pushed down south. Those who are the natives, the Moola Nivasi, they are referred to anthropologically when they do Indic studies. They are referred to as Adivasi, which we think that the translation should be tribals. But what does the word Adivasi technically mean? Adi means the first ones. So the land belonged to Adivasis. They were neither Hindu nor Dravidian nor Aryan. They had nothing to do with Hinduism. They had nothing to do with Vedic culture. Dravidians also had nothing to do with Vedic culture. It was brought in from the Aryans. The Europeans refer to them as Aryan. Same pronunciation difference, Aryan and Aryan, the same thing that we are discussing. Aryan invasion theory. What gave it more fuel and substantiality? It is called the recognition of a finding of entire civilizational belt in the Indus Valley. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Lothal, all these localities, there were cities that were found, very well laid out cities that were found, and they said, here you go, it is right in the cusp of entering into the Indian peninsula. This culture was brought in from the Aryans. So now the natural question should be, where did these Aryans come from? होना चाहिए ना उनका भी कोई location. Like you are all from India, right? Whether first generation or second generation, your roots are from India. Fair enough? Yes, no? Okay, good. See, the reason I am asking for the response is, earlier when there was no mask, I could see your face, I could understand whether you are understanding or not. Since that, I am like in a lost no man's land, like, समझ में आया कि नहीं? Do you understand? So I am going blind. So I keep asking in between. So please participate with your answers. So when they started this whole proposition, hypothesis of the Aryans invading, so then I had to invent now the origin of these Aryans. Now when you came from India, supposing anybody wants to go back to your roots, they will find a similar mass of people, a similar kind of belief system and the tradition that you are practicing, you will find a reflection of it there as well. Right? Fair enough? Yes or no? Forcefully people were taken to Maldives and Fiji and Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana. You will find a lot of people that were literally abducted, chained and brought into those lands to work as slaves. Like how the N word is considered as politically a wrong word to refer to black people, in these islands, to refer to an Indian as a coolie is politically incorrect. Remember the movie Coolie? Was a grand success in these islands because they could identify with the word. Because they were brought in as slaves, coolie. That was about 200 years ago. About 5 to 6 generations ago, 7 generations ago. Whenever I go to Guyana, Trinidad, Saint Martin, or these islands here, I am amazed that standing on the street, I can very clearly say which house is a Hindu house. There is a small temple on the outside as you enter into the house. There are flags right in front of the house. Around the temple there are flags which indicate that that house is a Hindu house. Because of the tropical nature, they have tulasi, that Vrindavan, so they have that. So looking at all of these signs, like Hanumanji saw Vibhishana's house with all the marks and he said, yahan koi Hari Bhakta rehta hai. Some Hari Bhakta lives here. Similarly, with these marks and signs, you can tell that there is a Hindu living in this house. Even after 200 years of disconnect, for almost up until 1950, they were slaves. It's only recently that they got their freedom. Still, there are families where Ramcharitmanas is memorized even today. There are kids that I have come across who can chant entire Ramcharitmanas front and back without a book. You will find the same connect when you go back to India. So when you say people have been forcefully migrated or invaded or settled, wherever they are from, you will find a certain marks, signs of their culture, civilization present. These are the examples that I gave you. Now, for a fact, you don't find these marks in Europe. Then or now, you don't find these marks. Why? The then existing religions in the European continent or subcontinent had been already wiped out clean. The Celtic, Gothic, Germanic, there were 23, 26 religions that can be mentioned. They have been wiped out clean. There's nobody with that kind of a practice. So even if there was any trace of anything remotely other than Abrahamic religious presence, had been wiped out completely. So there is definitely no Indo-Indic, Sanskrit, Vedic relevance that can be provided there. So they invented northwest of Central Asia, bordering into Middle East, in that region, they invented, is there a place like that? Is there a language like that? Is there a practice like that? You go into those regions, you will not find even a trace of it. They called this academically created, invented system as Proto-Indo-European language system. Proto-Indo-European language system. From there, these Aryans came in and they settled, the pure breed. Do you know Nazi movement, right? What year did it happen? Simple thing is World War I, World War II is the result of that Nazi movement, right? And what was their basis? The pure Aryan breed, the pure Aryan race. The rest of them have to be culled out. Where did he get that thought? He meaning Hitler. He who shall not be named. If you have watched Harry Potter series, so you will get the reference. So Hitler, where did he get this idea from? The pure Aryan breed, Aryan race. It cannot be a sudden origin of his own brainwave that he created that. This was a predominant thought pattern which was an accepted pattern of the Protestant Christian theological belief system. Protestant are the Lutherans, the original Martin Luther King, the original Martin Luther, not King, original Martin Luther, he is the one who started the Protestant group, that he protested that you see the separation of state and the church was brought in because of his protests. The entire Germanic belt, Scandinavian to Germany, were in the Protestant, and it was their belief that a pure breed of human beings who are sacrosanct, like they are the purest of the pure, they are the best of the best, are the Aryans, and the rest of them are uncouth. Specifically, the Jewish were mentioned in their books. Where did this Protestant thought come into picture? Aryan invasion theory, which was invented by the British. There was a person called William Jones. सुने हो नाम? He was in the 1700s. He came to India. What's the name? He was, लिख लीजिए अगर आपको रेफरेंस चाहिए होगा तो. 1746 to 1794, he died in Kolkata. When you refer to on the Google, you will find another William Jones. That fellow was a philologist and a mathematician. I am not referring to him. I am referring to that who was posted as the British East India Company's agent in India, Sir William Jones. He was also a theologist by learning, by his education. He was a theologist. Theologist meaning the Abrahamic religious study that he had done, and he was sent to India. When he came down, he was in utter sheer shock. His upbringing, his way of thinking said to him that, which was according to the Bible, that this creation got created do you know when? When was Jesus? What year? Seriously, you are thinking? (2022 ADE). After who? The prominent figure of their Abrahamic belief is Jesus. So 2022, that many years after. Prior to that, 4004 years, 4004 BCE, before, not before COVID, before Christ. (4004 BCE). How do I be so sure of it? The first 11 chapters of the Bible is called Genesis. Genesis is not, I am not talking about the Hyundai luxury model. Genesis is the first 11 chapters of the Bible, and in that it is very clearly mentioned that before Christ, there was 4004 years before him was the creation. 7 days the creation got created, that is explained. But 600 years later, 600 years after the creation, the whole world submerged in about 3,400 years, if 600 years later meaning. BCE, there was the floods, great floods, Noah's Ark, and in that Noah's Ark he was instructed to have all the flora and fauna species saved and then reprocreate this entire land. That is what their book says. This William Jones comes into India at a very prominent post. He is baffled, he is shocked, he is flabbergasted. Why? I'll give you a couple of dates, okay, just so that we can chronologically build on it. Mahabharata happened how many years ago? आप जो कुछ बोल रहे हैं बहुत अच्छा बोल रहे हैं, मुझे कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा. हाँ, now I can hear. 5,000 years, 5,100 plus, 5,130 plus. Which means it is about 3,200 BCE, right? Hello, 3,200 BCE there was this kind of a civilization where Mahabharata is referred to. And then Mahabharata was written by who? Bhagwan Veda Vyasa. The reason I call him Bhagwan is because he is mentioned. Vyasaya Vishnu Rupaya Vyasa Rupaya Vishnave Namo Vai Brahma Nidhaye Vasishtaya Namo Namaha. There are some people who say, oh, it was system of authors that were given the title Veda. It's a created concept again. See, Shankaracharya is a title given. Veda Vyasa is not a title given. Veda Vyasa was an individual. And specifically so, this shloka says, we are not talking of a system of people collectively called as Veda Vyasa. Yes, Swami ji log bole to they are like not just one individual, they are like collective. So Veda Vyasa is like that, collective. No, it is not a collective, it is one individual. Why? Vasisthaya Namo Namaha. The one who is in the lineage of Vasishtha Mahamuni. Such Veda Vyasa is considered as the very avatar of Bhagavan Vishnu. Is that established? He is the one who has authored Mahabharata. He is the one who has written down a formatted version of the Vedic literature. He is the one who is credited with the entire Ashtadasha Purana, Ashtadasha Upa Purana as well. 18 Puranas, 18 Upa Puranas. A mammoth task done by one individual called S.K.D. Vyas. His full name was S.K.D. Vyas. The reason I make fun like this is so that you remember the details. वो कुछ तो बोला था स्वामी ने, S.K.D. something. Sri Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. That was his complete name. Dvaipayana because he was born in an island. And he was dark in color. Therefore, he was named as Sri Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, S.K.D. Vyas, right? He wrote Mahabharata, 3,200 BC, 5,100 plus years ago. He has written other important works as well, which are called commentaries, Bhashya. One of the things that he has written a commentary upon is on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. That Patanjali Yoga Sutra, based off of which we have the Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga, 8 different limbs of yogic practices, of which asana is one of them. That which today we very quite shamelessly call as, oh, I do yoga. No, you don't do yoga, you do asana. Do you understand the difference? One of the steps of that 8 limbs is called asana. For their convenience, the British and the Western mind calls it yoga. We also shamelessly call it yoga. But what should have been the actual name of that whole process? Asana. So that Ashtanga Yoga, Bhagavan Vedavyasji has written a commentary upon, which I have studied. In that he says that few thousand years prior to me, this comprehensive system of fine-tuning the human body, mind and intellect, called the Ashtanga Yoga, given to us by Patanjali Maharshi, I bow unto his feet before I comment upon his Ashtadhyayi. So in his own commentary, what has he mapped? So he says that about 2800 years prior to him, this commentary, this work was given. So that puts Patanjali Maharshi to where? 6000 BCE. I am giving you chronological proof. Why did I take Mahabharata? Because Vyasa. Bhagavan Vyasa wrote a commentary on Patanjali Sutra. Now it gives me the validity of Patanjali Sutra. Patanjali, who has written that Yoga Sutra. So it is 6000 BCE. And the idiots like Deepak Chopra, he goes onto the stage and say, yoga has got nothing to do with Hinduism. Why? Because this Patanjali, he was born in Pakistan. Yes, 6000 BCE, where was Pakistan? This is on Oprah Winfrey show. Deepak Chopra. So that Patanjali Maharshi, 6000 BCE as mentioned within the system. That Patanjali Maharshi mentions in his work about Panini and his great contribution. Panini is not panini bread. Panini is the rishi who gave us the 8-chaptered grammar which systematically codes entire language of Sanskritam. Patanjali Rishi talks about Panini with a reference of about another 2000 years before Patanjali. Come from that side. No, they will come. Don't worry. So there is 3200 years of Mahabharata. Prior to Mahabharata is Patanjali Maharshi and his Yoga Siddhanta. The Yoga Siddhanta was about 6000 BCE, and he refers to Panini, which puts it around 8000 BCE. There in Panini's work, Panini is an amazing treatise, okay? If those of you who have studied the Panini's Ashtadhyayi, you talk about computer and coding today, he has coded the entire language in such a way, in such a beautiful way that there cannot be corruption that will enter into Sanskritam or Vedic literature possible, period. He has coded it such beautifully. Impenetrable, it cannot be shattered. He refers to this knowledge and he offers his salutations to Shesha Bhagavan, Adishesha, on who Bhagavan Narayana sleeps. when we read our Vedic literature, it said he sleeps on that Adishesha. By referring to a work about 6,000 years before him, which is called Surya Siddhanta, which is a treatise on astrology, astronomy and the planetary movement. So that puts it about 14,000 BCE. In that book, which is 14,000 BCE, there is a beautiful reference of this earth being referred to as Bhugola. Bhugola means it is not flat. Bhuchapta. Our book, our scriptures refer to it as Bhugola. What is earth referred to as? Saptadvipa Vasundhara. 7 continents on this earth. Which moves around its own axis. And it takes how many? What is the time it takes to move on its own axis? It is called Dina, 24 hours. Around this, there is a planetary object which revolves around its own axis while revolving around Earth. What is that? The Chandra. Both put together are revolving around the Sun, and like this there are several other planetary objects that are revolving around the Sun. This whole system is called, I am waiting for Sanskritam word, Surya Mandala. Surya Mandala meaning that which is solar centric. What is the book that I am talking about? Surya Siddhanta, 1400 BCE, 14,000 BCE. It is talking about these details. In the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam, written by Bhagavan Vedavyasji, about 2 months ago I did speak about it elaborately. If you go to Bhagavatam playlist on the YouTube, you will find it. Time, the shortest time, 10 to the power of minus 23, is called Trisaranu. And the calculation is given very clear direction as to what is the calculated speed of light. To the 7th decimal, there is a variation. 7th decimal. This is casually referred to in Bhagavatam. Now, when William Jones saw this kind of authentic literature which dates back not few years, not few centuries, but several thousand millenniums than what their book is prescribing. So he comes back to London and he puts all his thoughts in a series of books, and those volumes of books, you can go to archive.org and you can download these books, they are available. This particular book is called The Gods of Greece, Italy and India, Asiatic Research. It comes in several volumes. I am just referring to the first one and first 2 volumes. So in his first volume, if you want to be giving a critical analysis of this whole thing, page number 225 of that first volume, he mentions that this is William Jones speaking to his British Parliament, his Queen. He is addressing them. What is he saying? either the first 11 chapters of Genesis of the biblical reference are true, or the whole fabric of our national religion system is entirely false. Am I getting across? So in the next volume he says, I of course believe the sanctity of the venerable book and the first chapter of its Genesis. I believe in it, that it is our true history. Therefore, that which the Vedic literature is talking about is mere made up, fictitious, mythological in character. Today we very easily mention about Ramayana and its mythological characters. If you have been coming to Chinmaya Mission, you know that it is one of my pet peeves. Banned word is referring to any scripture as a mythology. The root word there is myth. Myth means fictitious, made up, not real. They are saying our ancestors, our history, our roots are unreal. Who started this whole concept? William Jones. When? mid 1700. And he is the one who first brought in the Aryan invasion theory so that it can weaken the faith of Indians in Vedic, Bharatiyas in their Vedic culture. Then came in Thomas Babington Macaulay, 1800 to 1859. He lived a very short life, but he messed up with everything that can be called as Sanatana Dharma. So he was the Secretary of War in the British East India Company, and he came to India. He wrote his observations in letters and books. There is Life and Letters of Macaulay, Lord Macaulay. There is a book, again you can find it online. There are also his Parliament address to the Parliament as well as the Queen. That address is also available online or on the British Archives. You will find it on both. There he makes these following observations. When was he? What was his time period? 1800 to 18. What happened around that time? 1857, a very important juncture in the Indian history and its resilience, that there is a revolutionary action that happens pan across India. When I say pan India, it is not just Gujarat to Assam, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. When I say pan Indian, Bharatavarsha, it is from Afghanistan to Tibet to Burma, Bhutan, Thailand, Indonesia, Sri Lanka and the mainland. All of this put together was still a valid geographical description of India up until 1876. That's why I went with that as the first introduction earlier. So 1857, what triggered? And Macaulay was still in India at that time. It happened right in front of his eyes that there was a revolution which went on for almost 5 years to quell it. About 15 to 16 million Hindus were culled down. That anybody who could be recognized as anything to do with revolutionary activity, even if they had given water or food, they were rounded off and killed. So it was not just Mangal Pandey, it was not just Jhansi Lakshmibai. There were several millions, and it happened in front of Macaulay, and therefore his observation is to be noted. He says, we should exploit the basic texture of India by creating a far divisive gap between the Hindu and the Mohammedans. So this we see as the seed of the political party that is supposed to have taken us after Indian independence. This is the ploy. That was his observation. In his life and work, you will see his words. Abolish the native education system, which is disgustingly primitive and unscientific in approach. The reason he found that the revolutionary system was so easy, that it happened with such effectiveness, because of his constant travel in India, because he first landed in Chennai. It is only after here that it shifts to Calcutta and then to Delhi, but it started in Chennai. Then the Madras Presidency. Then it was called the Madras Presidency. So he used to travel to down south as well as north. So in his travels, he saw that, like today, every street corner you will find a Starbucks. In Bharatvarsha then, every kingdom, every state, every corner of a neighborhood, you would find akhadas. That which would train and his surprise was, this training is being given to every commoner with respect to self-defense, where they could learn martial arts, wielding of swords, sticks, and wrestling, to both men and women. This is observations of TBM, Thomas Babington Macaulay. And says, therefore, all these akhadas should be banned, and anybody carrying arms and weapons on them should also be abolished. It is since then that we have been disconnected with our martial arts. So much is the distance that we seldom go for exercise. The maximum exercise that many of us do even he finds it funny. The little fellow. Then he said, we should form a serious committee. Macaulay's, we should form a serious committee to reinterpret, misinterpret, reassess the Vedic context in such a way that it creates a scope of disgust for their own roots because it lacks modernity. The concept of modern, scientific versus that which is oriental, traditional, which is which actually scientific, but then proven as not modern, not Western. Are we not suffering from that even today? Where did this begin? In the observations of TBM, Macaulay. Now the next, because he died 1859, the British Parliament took into consideration, they found an anthropologist in Germany who was interested in researching into the Indic Vedic studies. At least I would give credit to the earlier two, William Jones and Macaulay, that they came to India and they were shocked and they went back. The third fellow, in his entire long life compared to these two, he was born in 1823, he died in 1900, his name was Max Muller, Frederick Max Muller. In long life, he never once stepped into India. But he claimed himself to be a Sanskrit scholar, he claimed himself to be an Indologist, he claimed himself to be a Indic anthropologist, philologist, ontologist. I can go on of all the claims that he has. Now, this fellow, what was his belief? In his own work, which are the first few works that he has done is a series of 7 lectures, which was an integral part of anybody who wanted to be interviewed for a job in ICS. You know what is ICS? Indian Civil Service System. They had to listen and read in detail these essays, 7 essays by Max Muller. So there he says in what India can teach, in that he writes, I believe that the creation given in our holy book, the book of Genesis, is purely simply historical. No questions asked. I believe strongly that Hinduism and its history is unauthentic and definitely needs reform. The Vedic literature is the soul and heart of this civilization. It has to be reinterpreted with reforms in such a way that we can superimpose Christianity on the Hindu ethos. In comparison, they will find that Christianity, they will find that their own Vedic roots disgusting, thereby adapting to Christian path. Are we on that path? Let's check a quick check in next 2 minutes, because it's already time. When we read Mahabharata, Ramayana, our Itihasa, how many times do we find people question and ask, I don't know if Rama was real or not, Krishna was real or not. Pata nahi. There is some moral. I will agree with that. But the authenticity of it, I don't know. There is no proof, you know. Do you find many Hindus say that? Is the disgust already embedded into us? It's just one proof. Astrology, I don't believe in those cock and bull stories. Horoscopes, there is no validity in it. It is a science. That Surya Siddhanta, which is talking about earth being round, 14,000 years ago, is cock and bull story. But that which believed in a flat earth, not long ago, is scientific and modern. Do you see the fall? Therefore, let us reconnect to our history, our roots, because the validity of presence and the innovation of future is possible only if we have a clear, distinct identity with our civilizational history, which brings confidence, clarity to move forward. This is just one small basis of it. Now the question that you should ask is, okay, you put on scriptural basis references of books and stalwarts who have written it with years. Is there ground reality proof of anything beyond or before the civilization of Indus Valley? So that the Aryan invasion theory can be put to rest. RIP AIT. Rest in peace, Aryan invasion, Aryan immigration theory for good. Because if there is, and it is even brighter, better and more organized than the Indus Valley, it only means that there was a civilization way before the so-called claim of Aryan, who were the native of the land called Bharata. That we will see next week. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo